Before my grandmother died, she warned me never to stay in the house after sunset. I laughed, until the house learned my name. It copies voices. It waits in reflections. And once it hears you answer, it never lets you leave. My grandmother died on a Thursday, the kind of gray, quiet day that feels unfinished. Rain hung in the air without ever falling, and the house smelled like dust and old perfume. She had raised me after my parents died, and by the time she was gone, I was the only one left to sit by her bed and listen. Her hand was cold, lighter than I expected, as if part of her had already stepped away. "Listen," she said, her voice barely there. "When I'm gone, do not stay in this house after sunset." I smiled, the kind you give to comfort someone who is scared. "Grandma, I live here." Her fingers tightened with surprising strength. Her eyes, cloudy for years, sharpened just enough to focus on me. "It listens after dark," she whispered. "And it knows your name." Those were the last clear words she ever spoke. At the time, I told myself she meant memories, or grief, or loneliness. Old people wrap fear in strange language. That is what I believed while the machines went quiet and the nurse closed her eyes for her. That is what I believed while I signed papers and accepted condolences and unlocked the front door that night, alone. The house creaked as it always had, settling into itself like a tired animal. It was an old place, built before anyone bothered with straight lines or good lighting. The hallway seemed longer at night, the shadows deeper, thicker. I left the lights on, all of them, and slept badly on the couch. That was the first night I heard it. At first, it sounded like the house breathing. A slow, patient inhale and exhale, coming from somewhere inside the walls. I lay still, listening, counting the seconds in my head until I realized the rhythm was wrong. Too deliberate. Too focused. Then it stopped. I told myself it was pipes. Old houses have voices. That is what people say when they do not want to think too hard. The next morning, I found my grandmother's bedroom door open. She had always kept it closed. Always. Even when she was sick, even when she called for me in the night, she would wait for me to open it. She said it kept the drafts out. She said it kept things from wandering. Inside, the room smelled different. Sharper. Like rain on metal. Her mirror was covered with a sheet, the way she had insisted ever since I was a child. I never knew why. She would snap at me if I lifted it, her fear sudden and real. On the bed, right where she had died, was something she had never shown me. A notebook. Its cover was cracked leather, dark with age, and my name was written on it in her handwriting. Not shaky. Not weak. Strong, careful strokes, like she had written it long before she got sick. I should have left it alone. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened it. The first page read, "If you are reading this, then I am dead," and I failed to stop it. My mouth went dry. She wrote about the house, about how it had belonged to her family for generations, and how every generation lost someone to it. Disappearances. Accidents. People who walked into rooms and never came out the same. She never named what lived there. She only called it the listener. "It does not move when you watch it," she wrote. "It learns. It waits." I laughed, once, sharp and loud, just to break the tension crawling up my spine. It echoed too much. That night, I stayed anyway. I told myself fear feeds on attention. I told myself I was an adult, educated, rational. I locked the doors, closed the curtains, and avoided the hallway that led to her room. At sunset, the house changed. The air felt heavier, pressing down on my ears until everything sounded muffled, distant. The ticking clock in the kitchen slowed, stretching the seconds until they felt wrong. Then I heard my name. It came from the hallway. It sounded like my grandmother. Not her voice. As she had been at the end, weak and thin, but her voice from years ago. Warm. Familiar. Calling me for dinner. I stood up before I realized what I was doing. Halfway down the hall, I remembered the notebook. I remembered her hand tightening around mine. I stopped. The voice stopped too. For a long moment, there was nothing. Then, from just beyond her bedroom door, something whispered my name again. Closer this time. I backed away, heart pounding, every instinct screaming. Behind me, in the darkened living room, the television turned on by itself, flooding the walls with pale light. On the screen was the reflection of the hallway. And in that reflection, something was standing behind me. I did not turn around. That was the night I finally understood what my grandmother meant. And it was only the beginning. I stood frozen in the blue glow of the television, my reflection staring back at me with eyes too wide, too alert, like an animal cornered by something it cannot see. In the screen, the hallway behind me stretched longer than it should have, the shadows bending inward like they were leaning to listen. And there it was. It did not have a shape I could describe cleanly. Not tall, not short. Not solid, not smoke. It looked like the idea of a person, sketched in darkness and erased halfway through. Where its face should have been, there was only a deeper absence, a hole where light refused to stay. It did not move. That was when I remembered another line from the notebook. It does not move when you watch it. My knees trembled, but I kept my eyes locked on the screen. My reflection's mouth opened, gasping silently. I realized then that I was not breathing. Slowly, painfully, I reached behind me and grabbed the lamp from the side table without turning around. The moment my fingers wrapped around it, the thing in the reflection leaned forward. Not stepped. Leaned. As if it had been waiting for permission. I screamed and hurled the lamp at the television. The screen shattered in a burst of sparks and glass, plunging the room into darkness. I spun around, heart trying to tear its way out of my chest. There was nothing there. The hallway was empty. My grandmother's door was closed. I did not sleep that night. I sat with my back against the front door, every light on, the notebook clutched in my hands like a lifeline. When dawn finally crept through the windows, I felt older than I had the night before, like something had been taken from me while I was not looking. I read the rest of the notebook that morning. My grandmother had learned its rules the hard way. She wrote about her sister, who followed their mother's voice into the walls and was never found. About her husband, who saw his own reflection smile when he did not, and began speaking to corners of empty rooms. About nights spent awake, staring at doors, mirrors covered, never answering when the house called her name. The listener learned voices by stealing them. It could not leave the house, but it did not need to. It only needed someone to stay long enough. The final pages were written in darker ink, pressed hard into the paper. It is stronger now. It knows me. When I die, it will look for you. Do not trust reflections. Do not follow voices. And whatever you do, do not let it hear you say its name. I packed that day. I did not look in mirrors. I did not answer the phone when it rang, because every ring sounded just a little too familiar. As I dragged my bags to the front door, the house groaned, a long, aching sound, like disappointment. At sunset, the whispering began. Not loud. Not desperate. Just patient. My name, drifting from room to room, testing the shape of it. I left the key on the table and walked out without looking back. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. It has been years since then. I live far away now, in an apartment full of light and noise and neighbors who never stop talking. I do not stay in quiet places. I sleep with the television on. I avoid reflective surfaces when I am tired, because that is when it is easiest to make mistakes. Sometimes, when the room is very still, I hear my grandmother's voice say my name from just behind me. Sometimes, my reflection lags by half a second, like it is deciding what to do next. And sometimes, late at night, I swear the walls are listening. That is why I am writing this. Because if you ever inherit an old house, and someone you love warns you before they die, listen to them. And if you hear your name called from a dark room after sunset, do not answer. It already knows it.